Hello, welcome to ACTIVISTA. My name is Esti Dinur and I have the honor of welcoming you on behalf of the 6 women who worked for several months to create the program you will enjoy today. You will meet some of the other women later. We wanted to collectively create an event celebrating International Women's Day that reflected in part themes from the broad intersectional solidarity movements. In the next hour and a half, you will find a humble collection of music, spoken word and poetry that speak to immigrant rights, against militarism and war, for full rights for women and children, and for a green and healthy planet. We are thrilled to have received this collection of cultural testimony foregrounding Indigenous women. Some of the selections were recorded with homemade devices, and most of them were created during this worldwide pandemic crisis. Please offer your thoughts in the chats and comments, share with us your activism, and call out the women who are and were important in your life. And now for the show. First 3 artists are Farah Siraj from Jordan, Angel Bat Dawid from Chicago, and the first of 2 Haymarket Books poets, Los Angeles-born Salvadoran Yanel Pineda. Enjoy!
Hello everyone, my name is Farah Siraj and I'm delighted to be a part of Activista celebrating International Women's Day. I'm going to share some songs with you that have a message, and I feel this message is more important than ever. The first song is called London Saki. It's a song I wrote in Arabic about refugee women, saying we've not forgotten you, we've not forgotten your suffering, we've not forgotten your rights or your children's rights.
في عيونك قوة، في عيونك صبر، في عيونك إيمان، في عيونك إنسانية، وفي قلبك حزن وتمني للسلام.
The second song is called What If? It's a song I wrote about the consequences of war and violence, inviting you to consider what it would be like and reflect inwards if you were living in a war zone, remembering that you would never support a war if you had to live through it. So this is what the song is about. It's a reflection song, and I invite you to reflect while you listen.
I can look the other way, but you may not survive today. There's 1,000 miles between us anyway. I'm too far to hear you pray. But what if one day I would see you could have been me? Then we wouldn't be so far, and then I wouldn't stand for this war. But I'm safe and sound, I'm home at night, warm and dry, away from the fight. It's hard to imagine this could have been me. It's hard to imagine losing everything, But what if one day I would see you could have been me? Then we wouldn't be so far, and then I wouldn't stand for this war. What if one day they came for me, or even worse for my family? Then we wouldn't be so far, and then I wouldn't stand for this war. What if one day I would see you could have been me? Then we wouldn't be so far. Then I wouldn't stand for this war. And what if one day they came for me, or even worse for my family? Then we wouldn't be so far. Then I wouldn't stand for this war. Then I wouldn't stand for this war.
Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a pleasure to be a part of Activista, and I want to thank everyone who was involved, HotHouse, and all of the team that made this possible. It's been a pleasure, and I wish you all a happy International Women's Day.
Greetings, light and love, world. Greetings, light and love to you. I will never die, for the indestructible consciousness. I will never, 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 ever die. For I be, I be, I indestructible. Consciousness.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for ACTIVISTA, an International Women's Day celebration framing solidarity through culture. I'm Maya Marshall. I'm a manuscript editor at Haymarket Books and the managing editor of the Breakbeat Poets series for our imprint. I'm excited to kick off this event with our partners at HotHouse and to support the important work that they do to foster international exchange, support social activism, and grassroots development. I'm even more excited to be able to welcome Janelle Pineda and Sima Yasmin into this conversation to talk about their incredible poems and the work around culture and justice that they do. So I'm going to start off with our bios for them. Janelle Pineda is a Los Angeles-born Salvadorian poet and educator. She has performed her poetry internationally in both English and Spanish and has been published in LitHub, Pink, The Breakbeat Poets Volume 4, Latinx, The Wandering Song, Central American Writing in the U.S., among others. As a Marshall Scholar, she holds an MA in Creative Writing and Education from Goldsmiths, University of London. Janelle's debut poetry chapbook, Lineage of Rain, is available at haymarketbooks.org, bookshop, or janellepineda.com/book. Go buy it. Keep up with her at Pineda_Janelle and janellepineda.com. Dr. Sima Yasmin is author of the poetry collection If God is a Virus, is an Emmy Award-winning journalist, medical doctor, disease detective, and author. So she's busy. She was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in breaking news reporting in 2017 with her team from Dallas Morning News. Yasmin was a disease detective in the Epidemic Intelligence Service at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, where she chased outbreaks in maximum security prisons, American Indian reservations, border towns, and hospitals. Currently, Dr. Yasmin is a Stanford professor, medical analyst for CNN, and science correspondent for Condé Nast Entertainment. Find her at semayasmin.com, on Twitter at Dr. Yasmin, and on Instagram at Dr. Seema Yasmin. You can find her poetry collection at haymarketbooks.org or at Bookshop. I'm going to start with some questions for Janelle on her poems, and we'll then be blessed with some of her reading. And we'll follow that same format for Dr. Yasmin subsequently. So, Janelle, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Sound good?
Yeah, that's great.
Excellent. You do a powerful job of interweaving familial and communal stories while also breaking down the barriers, class, and access. I'm thinking particularly about your poem, Because Papi Drove Lincolns. How did that poem come about, and why was it important for you to speak to that experience?
Yeah, I think that a lot of my poetry grapples with questions of equity, inequity, and access. And as someone who's had just opportunities to be in a lot of elite spaces, I think about how I bring my people with me into those spaces. And I think there's been a lot of kind of reframing I've had to do in terms of how my family has actually supported me to be in the spaces that I'm in. Because Papi Drove Lincolns is a poem that explores my father's like job as a chauffeur for a lot of elite clientele in Los Angeles. And I think there was a way that I learned the language of eliteness, the brands of elite people through helping him do his job. And I think that's something that I've carried with me as I'm in spaces where people might question my presence, or might wonder why someone from my background could be in the same position as them.
100%. You get to be transgressive about borders that are invisible but very present because you are multiple in your identity. There's also attention paid to the power of heritage and storytelling, which I think is a sort of necessary result of what you've just explained, that you do remarkably well in Lineage of Rain, particularly in the poems Tio Tonio is Ready to Die and Rain. Could you speak more to this lineage of women as storytellers and what was important for readers to understand about lineage and the stories that we pass down?
Yeah. I think Rain specifically, especially as a poem that really connects to the title of the book and the central theme of like intergenerational storytelling, comes out of knowing and valuing the way that my grandmother's storytelling for me at a young age really inspired this desire to be a poet, this need to learn these stories, to tell them, to be excited about sharing them. And I think that contradicts a big history of silencing in Salvadoran culture, especially when we're talking about contexts of war, repression, violence against women. And I see a lot of my role as someone who really cares deeply about speaking out in regards to these themes. And I want to honor that the lineage of women, right, that have made it possible for me to be a poet and made it possible for me to speak as openly as I do, to make a living out of words, right, out of these stories. And I think that's been what's been super powerful for me about honoring these lineages in my work.
Absolutely, that ability to make a living out of words keeps them alive too in the storytelling. You come from a mighty group. You also have a thread of how traditions and ritual are important, i.e. your father who would teach us as kids how to master the accordion, or the very methodical way you almost instruct on eating a papaya rather than producing. how does tradition, or how do tradition and ritual keep you rooted and centered, both in your practice as a writer and in your heritage?
I think that a lot of, as I've said already, a lot of my poetry is a way of honoring my family, honoring my culture, and I think that it comes out of this place of an understanding that even within my own experience, there were times where I would have never told someone I was Salvadoran, and I think that's really surprising to people because so much of my work really focuses on Salvadoran history. And I think there's been a reclaiming in that process. And there's been a kind of, as I said earlier, just reframing and reprocessing my past experiences and understanding how my culture has always been a central part of who I am, and a central source of where I draw my own power, my own strength, my own resilience. I remember the lessons that have been shared with me, and the people who have been here throughout that journey.
Wonderful. Well, then let's give the people the stories. Yeah, I'd like to invite you to read some poems.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with Rain since we spoke a bit about it. Rain. I begin here, kneeling by Tana's bedside, begging for a story. Cuénteme un cuento, Tana, cuénteme un cuento. Tana waters my hair, combs it back into a tight braid. Va pues, bicha, venite aquí. Before words erupt, a roar of her laughter like miel. Tana bursts with carcajadas newly hatched and tells of cafetales, of serpents and machetes, of the blistering feel of sun, of the taste of dirt on tongue, of men swallowed by earth de pura vergüenza. ¿Me entendiste, cipota? Sí, I nod. Sí, Tana. The first time I asked Tana why she left El Salvador, me dice, porque allá mucho llueve. For weeks, Tana watched sky fall to earth from bus windows. She held on tightly to herself and the thought of mi mami, borders away and alone somewhere in la capital. No hay tiempo para esas babosadas, she thought. Wiping her eye-made rain away, Tana massaged her bloody feet into silence, her throat aching for just one sip. For years, I am afraid of rain. I am 6 years old and praying for sun. When rainfall begins, I run indoors, get caught by a teacher in a cafeteria corner crying. I am 6 years old and believe every time it rains, it is time to flee. I am 6 years old and afraid of being left behind. I am 6 years old and my blood remembers what it feels like to leave a whole homeland behind. A Salvadoran woman once wrote, "Our poetry has never had the luxury of being enamored with the moon." Perhaps this is why all my poems are about the sun, about coming from women who have survived by chasing it, women who go only where the light will feed them, women who leave the second they suspect a flood. I'll read one more. This poem is to the eldest daughter. Because she remembered to unfreeze the chicken, steam the arroz, wash the dishes, and prepare snacks for the kids after picking them up from school, dinner was always half ready by the time mommy got home from her 12-hour hospital shift, and I'd emerge quietly from the books I drowned myself in, those days when I took for granted the things she inevitably sacrificed. Time with friends, the basketball team, her own homework, a childhood learning to play the cello. Instead, she helped mommy raise the rest of us. While I wrote, she changed diapers, washed the cars, opened the windows, mopped the floors, took the heat when I broke the family camera, pulled me aside and scolded me for not understanding our parents couldn't afford the fancy summer programs I begged for. And still, I'm sure she stayed up helping. The summer, mommy decided to sell burritos every evening after work so they could pay for me to go write poems in Tennessee. Years of my jet setting, big dreaming, sleeping soundly, knowing she was home doing everything that needed doing. And still she drove 6 days cross country alone to watch me descend Old West steps, graduation cap and all. The string of roses she spent all night sewing draped over my neck. Oh, hermana, I bow to you now as I did then, wreathed by the grace of every goodness you have given.
How absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that you make suns, like bright, blistering suns out of the people who are your beloveds, and they are made to seem royal in your hands. Well done. And thank you for spending some time talking with us.
Framing solidarity through culture. What a beautiful and profound notion. My name is Karima Daudi, and I'm coming to you from Honolulu in the occupied Kingdom of Hawaii. I'm so honored to be a part of the group that's put this program together and excited to introduce you to our next artists. To continue the program, we have strong voices from Indigenous North America. Irma Pineda is a Zapoteca poet living in Oaxaca, Mexico, who champions the Zapotec language and culture and advocates for Indigenous rights. Lila June, whose lineages are Diné, Cheyenne, and European, uses her voice to advocate for Indigenous youth, intergenerational healing, and land stewardship. Make sure to follow the links in the chat to find out more about the artists and how to support them. We hope you enjoy.
Guadio Shigirato, ¿qué tal? Soy Irma Pineda, poeta vinizá o zapoteca de la región del Istmo de Oaxaca, México. Voy a compartir con ustedes un par de poemas. Kisuyuna agate, kisanda gusiando na. Nanga nyo bishose lu, dijayosho bishose gola lu, girani ma bisiaka jikali, nissaru una tigessa mastalle cidibani, pinaya ganihmana bana vinittila de bandada, kisuyuna agate, pinanga tijomisura cani ibiruna bishose vendavoa, bendani gudot yushi, bendani vicharu atileju, leju ni gucitte geu ni gubili cibisu, ciniavisu ni rindani lucice, schippi lunganane chisuiu gatte. Ne casa cujo magiratu se chisuiu na agatte, si utijuvaga ciladeghi scinu ulunesa, da anighici di sabighetta, nella sindani gendanavani, nella agaccagetta scendanu, nella agusivani sticianu, ne chisuiu na agatte, ti saccano una dippa, ti savani nuciaci, ti riunda stinu chisatti, ti saccano l'anu ne lì, ne cacignicigni, non ne sciughi celaiuni, chi ni picciaccia ni stato, ne saccano stalle la cidò, na se cicci scenda vinisa, ne chisuiu gatte, chisuiu na agatte, chisuiu dio na agatte. No me verás morir. No me verás morir, no podrás olvidarme. Soy tu madre, tu padre, la vieja palabra de tu abuelo, la costumbre de los tiempos, la lágrima que brota de un anciano sauce, la más triste de las ramas perdida entre las hojas. No me verás morir, porque soy un cesto de carrizo donde aún se mueven las tenazas del papá del camarón, el pescado que Dios comió, la serpiente que devoró un conejo, el conejo que siempre se burló del coyote, el coyote que tragó un panal de avispas, la miel que brota de mis senos, tu ombligo soy, y no me verás morir. Aunque creas que todos se han marchado, no me verás morir. Habrá una semilla escondida entre los matorrales del camino que a esta tierra ha de volver, y sembrará el futuro, y será alimento de nuestras almas, y renacerá nuestra palabra, y no me verás morir, porque seremos fuertes, porque seremos siempre vivos, porque nuestro canto será eterno, porque seremos nosotros y tú y los hijos de nuestros hijos y el temblor de la tierra que sacudirá el mar. Y seremos muchos corazones aferrados a la esencia de los Vinizá, y no me verás morir, no me verás morir, no me verás morir. Celebro mucho que estén conmemorando estas cuestiones de resistencia, de palabra, de cultura. Para mí esto es muy importante y pues agradezco profundamente a México Now, que a través de Claudia Norman pues ha hecho esta invitación, y cierro con el siguiente poema. Dinga gendaridinde era abilula adu, nebikwa agululubi, tigirama ni wini ripappa kenye. Dinga gendaridinde, rápido calaadu, nestilladu, gulunadu. Esta es la guerra, nos dijiste, y disparaste al aire para que todos los pájaros se marcharan. Esta es la guerra, nos dijimos, y empuñamos nuestra palabra. Dios quiche pelato. Muchas gracias. Hasta pronto.
Indigenous people, shine your light, we are equal. I remember the days when our prayers were illegal. I remember the days when being Indian was lethal. Yeah, we had a rough past, but get ready for the sequel. Get ready for the glorious comeback of our people. Oh, yeah. Rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart. Can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up, wake up. All nations rise. Rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's the time. All nations rise, rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's the time. With forgiveness as my bow and my prayers as my arrows, pull them back and let go. I watch them fly like sparrows. Have hope. Yeah, have hope. With compassion as my shield and faith down to my marrow, I will walk the pollen path even when it gets narrow. Yeah, yeah, I resurrect. Yes, you can bet that we seen the single mama raising children on the res. We seen domestic violence tear apart what we have left. We seen the alcohol take it all and leave us dead. We seen the children take their lives when they can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. Can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. No, we can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. No, we can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. Yeah. It's a war, but we've seen it all before. And now we know we can change it, 'cause that's why we were born. We know we are the ones that we have been waiting for. We are the ones Grandma has been praying for. So rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart. Can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up, wake up. Pueblo hermoso, levántense, es nuestro tiempo. No tienes que esconderte más. Ahora es nuestro tiempo. Mujer indígena, tú eres tan sagrada. Traigas medicina de tu suelo todavía. A pesar del abuso de tu cuerpo y tu tierra, respetamos tus ancestros y la suya cultura. Hombre indígena, tú eres honorable y yo veo la fuerza que todavía sobrevive. A pesar del abuso de tu raza venerable, yo respeto tus ritos, tus danzas, tus padres. Somos guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz y no vamos a escondernos más. Somos guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz y no vamos a escondernos más. All nations
They say that history is written by the victors.
rise up, 'cause
But how can
now's
there be
the
a victor
time.
when the war
We
isn't
don't
over?
have to
The battle has only
hide
just begun,
anymore,
and Creator
'cause
is
now's
sending
the time.
his very best warriors.
All
And this
nations
time, it isn't
rise,
Indians versus
rise up,
cowboys.
'cause now's
No,
the time.
this time,
We
it is
don't
all the
have to
beautiful races of humanity
hide
together on the
anymore,
same
'cause
side,
now's the
and
time.
we are fighting to replace our fear with love. And this time, bullets, arrows, and cannonballs won't save us. The only weapons that are useful in this battle are the weapons of truth, faith, and compassion.
Powerful, divine, brilliant, so generous. Thank you, Lila. Thank you, Irma. Thank you for joining in with us and celebrating Women's International Day. I'm Viviana. I am one of the producers of ACTIVISTA, and I'm coming to you from the unceded lands of the Lenni Lenape people. Thank you for joining us. Next up will be Maya and Haymarket Books, returning and with a poem by Sima Yasmin. To follow will be a wonderful performance by Colectivo de Mujeres. So stay tuned and enjoy.
I'd like to invite Seema to answer some questions and talk with me for a moment, and then we'll listen to some of her poems. Welcome, Seema.
Thank you, Maya. Thanks for having me. That was beautiful, Janelle. I loved listening to your poems.
Yeah, gorgeous. I have to say, I also love your poem, Seema, in If God is a Virus, which I have now read several times. I see a big focus of it, If God is a Virus, charts the Ebola epidemic and the stories of survivors and outbreak responders and journalists, and gives readers a better understanding of the virus itself, which is timely. But you also illuminate the disparities of medical access and treatment, also very timely, for example, with Black women and childbirth. Could you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. And, who knew this book would come out during a pandemic? Because I started writing it about 6 years ago when I was a journalist covering the crisis both in West Africa, in Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, but also here in the States because Ebola, of course, arrived here and touched our lives in many ways. And there were even decisions I was making while writing some of these poems 5 or 6 years ago about, oh, there's a poem I'll read for you in a moment that has the phrase PPE in it. And that kind of thing you do as a poet where you're like, do I leave that in and allow the context to help the reader? Am I okay with the reader perhaps being a little bit confused, a little bit lost, not knowing the book would come out at a time when we talk about PPE every day, and many of us wear PPE every single day. And not only are we dealing with a pandemic of COVID-19, but as we are speaking in the early months of 2021, there are Ebola epidemics raging again in West Africa, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, that are very much on my mind as well. And so I wrote this initially, poems from the vantage point of a journalist in a very journalistic way, in that I was reporting on survivors of Ebola in Liberia who had done this, their bodies had done this incredible thing, which was weather and survive an infection with something we knew to be really deadly. And now in life, they were weathering the stigma of having survived an almost deadly infection. And as someone who went into medicine because of my mother was an AIDS activist in the 90s, and that really impacted me. And that actually I did not want to be a doctor for a long time because I saw how shitty the medical establishment was to people living with HIV, how much they ostracized AIDS activists. And then perhaps as an older person deciding, I think I can influence something or be a better version of those doctors. I was very much frustrated with medicine and medical aid organizations in some regards, but also frustrated in my own experience as a doctor who became a journalist because I thought that would make me better at protecting public health, and then seeing all the things that journalism does to perpetuate cycles of oppression, even as we talk about speaking truth to power, even as we talk about discomforting the powerful, and giving voice to the vulnerable. So that's what I was getting at with these poems, that interrogation of, yes, the virus, yes, the lives of survivors, but also the role of journalists and the role of doctors and public health in covering and responding to these crises.
I appreciate that comprehensive answer, and that sort of answer based in the humanity of the thing and of the people who enter from a science vantage and also have to enter with their humanity intact. So I appreciate that. The title poem and the subsequent persona poems speak from the voice of the virus itself as she. It's such a fascinating approach to shaking up our ideas about our relationship to viruses and vice versa. I'd love to hear more about how that came about, and what about persona helped you better understand that relationship.
It's a bit of a kind of dodgy thing to do as a scientist, because even within science, we have this argument, are viruses living things? No, of course they're not. Or well, maybe they have elements of being living things. Like we kind of often leave that discussion to the side because, but I'm really interested in that discussion. I'm really interested in the power of viruses, but then also the power that we give to viruses. So, for example, one question I keep being asked on CNN at the moment, or in my role as an analyst, is, you live in California. How come California's been so hard hit? And why did California do okay in the beginning? Why is California doing worse than Florida when Florida seems to have just kind of not followed a lot of the public health guidelines? Because I think I get asked these questions because there's so much focus on the virus. And it's like, okay, put that to the side for a second. Let's look at California's social vulnerability score. Let's look at how many Californians don't have a house or a safe place to sleep in. Let's look at how California doesn't have enough hospital beds for its residents compared to a lot of states. We just don't have a good proportion. So there's all these factors that then empower a virus, give the virus more of a godly power, I suppose, or this omnipotence. And I was frustrated sometimes at that tension. And then thinking about the HIV/AIDS pandemic, thinking about Ebola epidemic. I'll give you one example, like learning in medical school about Ebola as this very distant infection, right? We weren't ever going to see it. You see that the case fatality rate is so high, like let's say it's in the 80s or 90% area, right? And then Ebola happens in 2014 to 2016. It happens in a part of the world, on a continent where many news outlets feel we don't even have to do our due diligence, whatever, it's far away. Then Ebola arrives in the West usually through people who've gone to help out, nurses, doctors. And then you're like, hold on. So they get airlifted to the UK or to Scotland, and then they get airlifted to Nebraska or other parts of the state, and the case fatality rate of Ebola is no longer what it says in the textbooks. So even that, and maybe that sounds really obvious, and sometimes it doesn't sound very obvious at all, the way that these things all combine, and yet that we try to separate them out in really weird ways, so that I will get asked a question about California as if the virus will do exactly the same thing in one place as another when the social conditions are so different, when we've left people living paycheck to paycheck. So that's very much what I was thinking about in writing the manuscript. And then with the persona poems, I guess as a journalist and a science writer, I'm always thinking, how do I bring you face to face with something that you can't see? How do I make you care about an infection that you think is really far away and therefore is not in your life? I think anthropomorphizing things can be very problematic and also really fascinating and really fun. And I like all of those elements. And so I just kind of went down this road of, what if the virus is a Muslim woman that's living inside your bone marrow? What if the virus is the security guard at the Planned Parenthood in the northwest part of DC, who's hoping no one gets blown up because they need a pap smear, or need to have an abortion or whatever that might be. So that's kind of where I was going with those poems.
What a powerful intervention the persona can be. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a good craft talk in a moment too when it comes to and then I have one last question, and I would love to hear some poems from you. Your poem 41, Suraya Scenes, and how you weave these beautiful narratives of survival among 5 women. It's an incredible testament to healing and resilience that threads throughout the book in different ways. Could you speak to ways you witnessed resilience and healing, even through the darkness of the epidemic, and even the ways you see those stories unfolding in our current movement?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that question. I love leaning into that because that's also what this book is about. With that particular poem, I was thinking about the women in my family and the prayer circles we have, and the faith that we have in those prayer circles and collective praying for each other, and how much goes unsaid, and how much you might be praying for one person, not knowing really what you're praying for or really what they've gone through. And so I was imagining these conditions in which perhaps the truth does seep out. We kind of get to live the past lives of these women who are now in England, but lived through an ethnic cleansing in Burma and lived through partition and violence in India. So I was thinking about that. And then there are other poems about joy and about pleasure that were so important for me, because if you're writing a book about disease, you're also writing a book about healing, and you're also writing a book about humans. And in an epidemic, you're very much writing about connectedness and all of the brilliance and the joy and the healing and the infection that can bring. And of course, woven into that is kind of my scholarly research is on the contagiousness of information and the contagiousness of misinformation and disinformation and rumors and myths and hoaxes. So connectedness is very much something that I think about, especially I guess now when I'm feeling very disconnected from people that I love, especially in a physical way. But yeah, that had to be in the book. Maybe there isn't even enough of it. I don't know. I'll keep thinking about that. But there are even some poems in there that are just about. I mean, there's one called Hyman Hymn, which is almost like a hymn and a prayer towards this amazing, sometimes too overly emphasized membrane that some people have it and some people don't. So leaning into all those parts of our physical beings, literal membranes, bone marrow, all of that. Yeah, I don't know if that answers it.
I think that answers it beautifully. I think delight and pleasure and infectiousness are so generatively connected. And I think that comes through in your book. And this book about the whole person must include not only the illness, but the wellness and what's at stake, which is sometimes joy. I love hearing about this prayer circle that has the power that it has.
Yeah.
And now I would love to hear your poems.
I will start off with a poem that's called All the News That's Fit to Print. Dark deaths matter more if they speak English, if our nurses are sent to help and return with trinkets, tans, and meningitis. Editorial judgment dictates at least 16 Black people must die to equal one white man's death. 43 if the outbreak is old news, does not involve profuse hemorrhage, a former colony, or biblical references. Subtract 12 if our boys are deployed to clean up their mess. Add 9 if babies are disintegrating in shallow graves, but restrict to 12 inches maximum. Even maple syrup tastes bitter, licked off fingers inked with destitution. Buttercream pancakes stick in the throat, and it's all happening so far, far away. Follow the story with one reporter who knows nothing of PPE, shrouds, or ritual mourning. Send 4 photogs. Overuse 2 underpaid local fixers if deadlines for awards are approaching. Win a Pulitzer for photos of brown faces eating expired medicines smeared in peanut butter aid. Say it is a gift from the American people. Say it was worth the ink. I'll read the first poem in the manuscript. Disease is not the only thing that spreads. What else is contagious? Ellen's long tongue, a rumor we buried Daddy in an unmarked grave. History, pathogens crisscrossing agar-plated petri dishes like rebel soldiers breaching trenches. This story, that we had it coming, that we are good only for uncivil wars and diseases, that we prayed for colonization, blood, microbes escaping test tubes, conquering lab countertops, slower than hearsay. She say we burned daddy's corpse like bad Muslims, like white-coated doctors instructed. What else is contagious? Doctored death certificates, half-truths, cursive, ink. They say there is no cure, then there is a cure only for them. So, what else spreads? Knots of grief twisting bowels into distended loops of fermenting torment. No days of mourning, 2 years of outside intervention. Armies, conviction, belief that this will spread and spread, that all contagions wax endemic. This one will never end. And maybe I will read one more. Actually, let me read a poem that I wasn't planning on reading, but that Janelle made me, one line in Janelle's poem, Rain, made me think about this poem, which is also in the book, If God is a Virus. This poem is called Big Sister Teaches Me How to Ululate. Yalla, Habibti, move your tongue like the sea, easy. My big sister teaches me to ululate, rolls her tongue in waves, dips thin fingers inside my mouth to pull out mine, stretches it long and pinches the tip. Watch, we move tongues like this. I hear the walls of our father's house collapse and we become free. On the ferry to Tangier, I shriek across the sea, practice how to sound like a real woman. Old aunties grab my buttocks, smush their breasts against my back and sing, cover your mouth, Habibti. Only women on the upper deck only see. We move tongues like this to tell the waves stay back, tell men stay back, tell the dead stay gone, tell runaway wives stay gone. They turn me into wisteria woman, limbs wrapped around poles and thighs as they guide me. Throw back your head, epiglottis to the breeze. Salt air burns my throat's hot membranes, catches on the tight knots of my vocal cords. All my life, I was told women must swallow sand unless we are sounding a warning. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. And what a perfect anthem to end on. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks to Seema and Janelle for sharing your work in conversation with these other incredible International Women's Day poets, musicians, and artists. So much of what we discussed is a great way to frame what we'll be enjoying for the rest of the event, including preserving our stories as a way to resist empire, and how we take care of one another despite the social and ecological and economic oppressions that we face across the world. And maybe most importantly, these women that we're hearing remind us that the power of sharing our experiences through art always allows us to have fortitude and persistence together. And I encourage you all to seek out and support these artists' work and all of the artists that you'll see in the celebration. Be well, and thank you.
No te entregues, no te olvides, no perdones, no te ciegues, no te humilles, no abandones, no permitas que el engaño te destroce. Te deshonre.
Juégate entera, pero juégate.
Es nuestro grito, grito de mujer, grito de osadía, que nos guía por el camino hacia la libertad, que nos lleva a nuestro centro, a descubrir nuestra verdad.
No te aísles, no te escondas, no te anules, no te humilles, no te escapes, no te culpes, que se encienda la noche de tu vida. No eres débil, no te calles, no te rindas. Alza los brazos y redímete. Juégate entera, pero juégate. Juégate entera, pero juégate.
Una poeta derrama palabras en nuestras manos para esparcirlas sobre la tierra. Una sabia de trajes largos enciende una llama, llama de vida sobre nuestros pechos, para encender la voz ardiente que vibra por la unidad.
Alza los brazos y redímete. Juégate entera, pero juégate. Juégate entera, pero juégate. Juégate entera, pero
El derecho es mío. Yo decido cuándo y con quién. No más violación. No más femicidio. Mi cuerpo no se abusa. Mi cuerpo es sagrado. No más violación. No más femicidio.
Respeto para todas las mujeres latinoamericanas y del mundo entero. Hombre, mujer, mismo trabajo, mismo acceso, mismo salario, mismo deber. Valoramos el trabajo de las mujeres. Démosle el el sueldo que le corresponde y el poder que se merece. Más mujeres músicos, más mujeres presidente, más mujeres políticas, más mujeres científicas, más mujeres poetas, pero más poder para la mujer. El machismo es fascismo.
El útero es mío y lo manejo yo. Aborto legal, seguro y gratuito para toda Latinoamérica. Dice un proverbio africano, el agua sucia no puede lavarse. Hay mujeres y niñas que caminan más de 8 horas diarias en busca de agua, sin más tiempo para otra cosa, para su supervivencia. Tenemos que poner la lupa en el fin del hambre, el fin de la pobreza, el acceso universal a la sanidad y el acceso al agua, a las energías, siempre con una perspectiva de género. La revolución será feminista y verde, si no, no será evolución.
Para las mujeres que dieron sus vidas para darnos libertad e igualdad, luchaste con gran valentía por la soberanía de los pueblos en Latinoamérica.
Hello everyone, I'm Jin Won, a Katak dancer and tabla player from Korea. I hope you all are having a wonderful time. Our final performances of the day, we have Brandy Nalani McDougall from Hawaii, who's going to recite her powerful poem on the sense of place, of invasion and occupation, of stories of American military aggression and the people who fight to protect their homeland. Natu Kamara, who is a musician and activist for the empowerment and education of girls and women in West Africa, performing with her band at her home studio in Guinea. And last, we have Kyunghwa Yu from South Korea, who revived the Korean string instrument Cheolhyungum and became a new pioneer for its role in contemporary music. She's going to present an original composition inspired by traditional Korean shamanic music. I want to give a special thanks to HotHouse for hosting this wonderful event, and to all my team members who have been working through the challenges together for the last few months to celebrate the empowerment of women around the world. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Ku Piki Piki O. Stand here on the scarred edge of this island, where Robert Wilcox and Samuel Nolene may have stood in 1895 as they fought to protect Hawaii from white annexationists backed by the American military. Here, where Hawaii was annexed in violation of international law in 1898. Stand at the scarred edge of 1916, where Americans drilled and cracked the reef and bombed coastal cliffs to build battery after battery housing seacoast guns, reinforced magazines for munitions, and command bunkers before being decommissioned. Here, where in 1933, Americans built a new battery with railway guns and another magazine before also being decommissioned. Stand here, where a tobacco heiress, once known as the richest girl in the world, built one of her homes in 1937 and ornamented her walls and floors and courtyard with the art, jewels, the prayers of Muslim people whose countries, whose homes and treasures are now gunned and bombed by Americans. Stand here at the top of Black Point, one of the most exclusive places to live in Hawaii. Stand here outside the outer gate so you understand only the wealthy residents and their guests can enter their 75 lavish houses, that not just anyone can live there. Imagine getting past that gate and standing outside another, the inner gate, the one that opens exclusively for those who live in the 8 estates on Royal Circle, where, as realtors say, the highest of Hawaiian ali'i on Oahu once lived, where an oceanfront estate is listed for $23 million and a Bali-inspired villa is priced at $14.8, where affluent Americans stand safely above the buried batteries of war, watching waves rise and break. Stand here at the breaking edge of Iraq and Afghanistan as the US military invades and raids their oil fields, as the US chooses their leaders and builds Middle Eastern bases. Stand here at the shattered edge of Raqqa, Syria, where 300,000 people once lived, where the US dropped 10,000 bombs to destroy 80% of the city through airstrikes alone. Stand here at the receding edge of Palestine as Israel uses US weapons to confiscate land by military order, to build military outposts, then Israeli settlements. Stand here on stolen land at the edge of fences, checkpoints, and guard posts. Stand here where international law is broken without consequences. Stand here at the edge of hotels and mansions, military golf courses over ancestral graves, adverse possession and deeds from British or French mandate, Israeli or American settlement and military base, from overthrow and annexation, population transfer, from strangers left to wander, ruins hungry. Stand here at the edge of return, return to our people whose blood and flesh and bone and hair, whose roots and seeds have been ground into the mud, the sand, held in black basalt. We, the Mauna, Moana, Aina, Ikena, Jabal, Muhit, Ad, Almerifa, here where we breathe life into ashes and become Simor, Alai, where we return from flight, from bomb and blood, from char and exile, where we return as rain and salt, as eroding wind, as these waves, as olive groves and oranges, where our lands are returned and we are returned to them. Stand here at the edge of truth. This is not the United States. This is not a US-backed regime. This is Palestine, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Syria. This is Hawaii. This is not paradise. This is not Diamond Head. This is Leahi. This is not Black Point. This is Ku Piki Piki O. Stand here.
Hi, my name is Natu Kamara, singer, songwriter, performer from Guinea. Thank you for having me in this wonderful day. Before we begin, I will just say happy day to all of you women in the world. Happy Women's Day to the powerful, to the goddess in this earth. It's a Women's Day, but every day is a Women's Day. So today I'll be playing a song about women, because I wrote this song about arranged weddings and premature weddings and forced marriage. So this song was inspired from a real story, as all my songs, because all my songs are always from somewhere, and it's always a true story. So we came from school, right? And we got home. I went to my friends. It was a wedding happening, and we had no idea whose wedding was happening. It was her wedding. And we did try to run, but the running didn't succeed because her cousins went and they grabbed her. So I remember crying. We were crying that wedding, but the wedding still happened. She got married and she went to Madagascar. Wherever you are, my dear friend, I know she's in Madagascar. If she happened to see this video, this is for her, and this is for all the women around the world. Let's support women. Let's encourage them. Let's respect them. Let's give them the credit they deserve. Happy day, ladies. Happy days to you, queens, from my heart to you. This song is called Momihida. Enjoy. beg you, Father, I beg you, Mother, give me a chance to grow. Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. Father, I beg you, Mother, let the children grow. Yeah, yeah.
금일망자 혼이라도 왔거들랑 넋이라도 왔거들랑 일가친척 상봉하고 내 채가나 내 채가나 백년태관 내 채관 자식들 챙겨 보다 한말 세세 원정 나누고 보다 쓴 명복일랑 자식들께 점제하고 허우 극락 세계로 가옵소사
불쌍하신 망제님 어둠에가 극락이고 어둠에가 선왕했나 꽃은 꺾어 머리에 꽂고 차상고천님은 품에다 넣으시고 연불로 양석사고 세왕가고 극락가실 적은 천궁 없이 어이가리 천궁이야 천궁이야
물이 없어 못 오거든 술삼잔에 돌아가고 육신이 없어 못 가거든 초백지 한 장에 돌아가고 상주제복 갈아입고 집신 신고